Imagine your husband dies choking on a pretzel, and then you die of grief a few weeks later. And you wake up in what looks like the world's most existential convention hall, with a coordinator telling you that you have 7 days to choose your forever. Hard enough, right? Except now you have two husbands standing in front of you. One you spent 67 years with, and one who died in the Korean War and has been waiting for you ever since. And they both love you, and you love them both. And eternity is a very long time to make the wrong choice. But before we get there, let's go back to where this whole thing starts. We open with Larry and Joan, an elderly couple who have been married for 65 years. They bicker about everything, but it's the kind of playful arguing that only comes from spending a lifetime together. Despite all the little disagreements, it's obvious they love each other deeply. The two are on their way to a family gender reveal party, and during the drive, we learn something serious. Joan has cancer. The couple has been keeping it a secret, but Larry gently encourages her to tell the family soon. At the party, the mood is light. The kids start joking around and even bring up Joan's first husband, teasing her about how handsome he was. Everyone laughs, until things suddenly take a dark turn. In the middle of the celebration, Larry chokes on a pretzel and tragically dies. We immediately cut to a moving train, where a much younger version of Larry suddenly wakes up. He's confused and has no idea how he got there. When the train stops at the next junction, he steps off and walks into what looks like a strange mid-century hotel lobby. A crowded way station filled with all kinds of people, all wearing the same confused expression he is. At the reception desk, which is oddly run by a child, Larry is told to take a seat and wait for his afterlife coordinator. So he heads to the waiting area. And after a while, a woman named Anna arrives. Welcome to Sandy's Timeline. Today we're breaking down the comedic thriller Eternity. If you enjoy movie recaps like this, make sure to subscribe for more breakdowns just like this one. Let's dive in. Anna wastes no time laying everything out. She explains why there are so many children running around. When you arrive at the junction, you take the form of yourself at the time you are happiest in your life. And for a lot of people, that happens to be childhood. Then she gets into the rules. Larry has 7 days to browse and choose from a range of eternities. Each one a different world, a different version of forever. He is given a hotel room to stay in while he decides. But here is the part that carries the most weight. Once he picks, there is no going back. Whatever he chooses is what he lives in for the rest of forever. With nothing to do and too much to think about, Larry finds his way to the bar. And that is where he meets a charming, easygoing man who seems to know this place a little too well. And over drinks, he fills Larry in on a few things Anna conveniently left out. First, people who cannot make up their minds about their eternity eventually have to get a job just to earn the right to stay at the junction. Second, and this is the one that hits Larry hardest, once you choose an eternity, you cannot visit anyone living in a different one. Meaning wherever Joan ends up and wherever he ends up, they could be separated forever. And third, if you try to sneak between eternities and get caught, you do not get a slap on the wrist. You get sent to the eternity void. And nobody wants to know what that is. Larry sits with all of that information and does the only reasonable thing a man in his position can do. He orders another drink. With nothing left to do, Larry eventually settles on a decision. He picks Beach World not because it is his dream eternity, but because he knows Joan and he can shape it into something she would love. He writes her a note and asks Anna to make sure Joan gets it when she arrives, explaining where he is and hoping she will come find him. Then he heads to the train to board. But just as he is about to leave, he spots her, Joan, walking into the junction as her younger self, bright-eyed, confused, completely overwhelmed. And Larry abandons that train without a second thought and rushes back to her. Their reunion picks up exactly where they left off. The first thing out of Joan's mouth is that she told him to slow down on those pretzels. And for just a moment, everything feels right again. Until the crowd parts. And standing right there is Luke, the man who died in the Korean War 67 years ago and never once left this spot because he was waiting for her, and only her. Joan is completely frozen. Because this is not just a love triangle. This is the life she lived standing face to face with the life she never got to have. And now she has to choose between them. For eternity. And that is where everything gets complicated. Because the bartender Larry has been drinking with all night, The easygoing, charming man who knew this place a little too well turns out to be Luke, Joan's first husband, the man who died in the Korean War and never once left the junction because he was waiting for her. He did not pick an eternity. He took a job as a bartender just so he could stay and be there the moment she arrived. And he has been doing that for 67 years. Larry is stunned. Joan is overwhelmed. And now these two men, both of whom love this woman completely and genuinely, are standing in the same room competing for the same forever. Joan gets her own afterlife coordinator named Ryan, who from the jump seems to be quietly steering her toward Luke. And both men immediately get to work trying to win her over. Larry arranges for a Dean Martin impersonator, Joan's favorite artist, to perform for her. Except it is not Dean Martin. It is just a struggling impersonator with a drinking problem who ends up pathetically begging for Joan's attention mid-performance. Luke steps in and knocks the man out to defend her. Larry comes running in too late, and Joan orders both of them to shut up. So Anna and Ryan take it upstairs to the higher powers and come back with a decision. Because of Joan's unique circumstances, she is granted something nobody else at the junction gets: a one-time visit to both eternities before making her final choice. The two men flip a coin. Luke wins, and he takes Joan first into a Rocky Mountain wilderness eternity. Quiet, cold, romantic, preserved perfectly in the amber of a love cut short. They visit the archives together, a long hallway where memories exist as life-sized walkable moments, and watch their love story play out right in front of them. How they met, their first dinner, their wedding, the wrenching goodbye at the dock before he left for war. Beautiful and devastating all at once. But then Luke sees something in those archives that quietly breaks him. Larry proposed to Joan at that exact same dock, the most sacred place in their story. Luke used it to begin his own. That wound never gets spoken out loud. But you see it settle into Luke's face, and when they get back, they fight it out, but eventually make peace. Then Joan visits Larry's chosen eternity, Beach World. Sunny, crowded, imperfect. Joan's first words? This would have been a nice vacation. And just like that, their old rhythm slips back into place. They revisit their first date through the archives. The flat tire, the nervous charm, Larry trying to make everything okay. And it is real and warm and deeply familiar in a way that the mountain wilderness simply is not. But Joan is still not ready to decide. Because Luke is the life she imagined, and Larry is the life she lived. And how do you choose between those two things? Things come to a head when Joan discovers the letter Larry had written before she died. The one where he had already chosen his eternity and was just going to wait for her to come find him. And instead of being moved by it, Joan is furious. She feels tricked. She feels like he couldn't even last a week. And in that frustration, overwhelmed, exhausted, torn apart, Joan makes a decision nobody saw coming. She chooses neither man. She decides to spend her eternity with her friend Karen instead. But then Larry notices something. Joan's hair. It is long, longer than she ever wore it during their marriage. And Larry knows Joan, knows her completely, and he knows that she only wore her hair long during her first marriage, meaning the version of Joan standing in front of him right now, the happiest version of herself, belongs to the life she had with Luke. And Larry, this man who came into the afterlife with one single goal of being with his wife forever, makes the most selfless decision of his entire life. He finds Joan just as she is about to board a train to Paris with Karen and tells her to go to Luke, that she deserves that love, that fiery, sparky, unfinished kind. And she listens. So Joan goes to Luke. And at first, it is everything she imagined. They picnic, they drink wine, they walk through the mountains. But as time passes, something starts to shift. Joan keeps drifting back to the archives, not to watch her life with Luke, but to watch her life with Larry. Meeting him while shelving books at the library, raising their son, the long, ordinary seasons of everyday life. And she begins to understand something that the whole film has been quietly building toward. Luke is the love that stayed perfect because it never had to survive real time. They never got to grow and change and become new people together. What she projected onto him was a complete life that never actually happened. Larry is different. Larry is 65 years of arguments and pretzels and showing up and knowing her favorite music and noticing when her hair changed. Larry is friction, and the film treats that friction not as failure but as evidence. Evidence of a love that was real enough to get messy. Joan decides she wants Larry, and she is willing to risk the void to get back to him. Luke already knows, and instead of fighting it, he does something extraordinary. He creates a distraction, drawing the Eternity Police away so Joan can escape through the archives. They find closure together first, mourning quietly the lives they never got to have. And then he lets her go, not because he stopped loving her, but because he loved her enough to know the difference between the life she dreamed and the life that was actually hers. Joan runs. The Eternity Police are behind her. She steals a set of keys, bursts through a door, and runs straight into Anna and Ryan, her coordinator and Larry's, who have been quietly rooting for exactly this outcome. They lead her to Larry, and together the four of them slip into a discontinued eternity, one that has been closed, outdated, no longer in use. And Larry and Joan walk into it together, ready for whatever forever holds. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this recap, you will definitely enjoy the one above. A man given 90 minutes by an AI judge to prove he didn't kill his wife. This is Sandy's Timeline, and I will catch you in the next one.